Here. So last topic, last things we're going to talk about, pretty short material. We're going to spend a lot of time looking at the exam next week and make sure we're all on the same page for that. I've got a lot more to discuss later, but while we have this recording, I just want to have you guys know from the bottom of my heart, thank you for all of your participation, hard work, showing up every week, showing up on the nicest day of the spring. I appreciate everything. I hope you guys are happy with what we did in this class, what you learned and what you got out of it. I hope you got out of what you were hoping. If anybody needs anything from me, piece of advice, what do you think? I'm worried about that. Or just to say hello, drop me a line at any time. Even if you decide this isn't your career and you just want to go some other direction, if you think I can offer you something, just reach out to me. So let's talk about today's stuff, and then we got other stuff to do too. So current issues, most of these things we've talked about already. So we're going to recap some of them. Some of it's new too. So the multi-state licensure is a big topic that I think we talked about a lot. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Or I guess it was 2 weeks ago. I forget exactly when, but anyway, that's the being able to have one license and go practice in other states with your one license. Now, of course, each state still has its own hoops to step through, but it's way more efficient than what used to happen. Border practice, pretty much all of Rhode Island is a border. You are a border practitioner, although we don't really like to travel. So, 20 minutes and you go, oh, geez, I don't know if I could do that. But anybody that lives on a border town of a state, really, really is beneficial. But travel PTs and PTAs, excellent as well. So the travel work, what that means is companies offer 13-week contracts. So, hey, we need somebody for 13 weeks. Sometimes it's some places are seasonal. Martha's Vineyard, Block Island, in this neck, Nantucket, in this neck of the woods. Westerly, actually, I was just talking to somebody who works from Westerly, and they said they have a big influx then. I'm sure we could go throughout the country and some states, ski towns, big winter. So it's not travel is nice because those places get to say, hey, we'll hire you for 13 weeks. There's not enough of a population in Block Island year round to have a year round practitioner. That's not going to work. But for 3 months, yeah, there's a big swell of population. So these companies say we need somebody for 13 weeks. Other instances that happens, one, sometimes it's just tough to find work and we need to patch a hole real quick. Maternity leave, paternity leave, both of those definitely count. Sudden injury or illnesses, oh my God, we just need somebody right now. All of those things, companies will say, hey, we just need somebody for 3 months. So there's a lot of travel jobs out there. Yeah, I know some. So most travel companies, each place does it a little different. So I'm just going to speak broadly. Sometimes they either give you a housing stipend and they say, here's your housing stipend, go find your own place. And other times, well, that works out really well because if you don't really care where you live, that's more income for you. You give me $1,000 a month for housing, and I'm going to find an $800 a month apartment, and now I'm good to go. Other places they might even have a house or an apartment. So some of their bigger cities might have an area like that. And also there's these places, I don't know if you're familiar with like extended stay type hotels. It's like a very specialized hotel where you are staying at this hotel for weeks or months on end. So those are a lot of times what you do that. So yeah, a few different options. So I'll tell you what though, travel PT and PTA work, highest paid in the industry. So if you want to make good money, that's a good place to do it. Some of the downsides is I go sign up for someone to work there for 13 weeks. I don't know when my next 13-week contract is going to be. Now, if you've got a good company, they've got work for you, but that doesn't always mean you get to select where you're going. So there's you have to be able to withstand a little bit of chaos. I've had some friends do some travel work, and there'll be times that on week 12 of their 13-week contract, they don't know when their next contract is. If you're okay with a little bit of chaos, then that's not that bad. Those people basically just told me that they just view it as vacation. You work 13 weeks, you can't really take time off. That company that hired you needs you to work that 13 weeks, some exceptions. So they just basically said, yeah, if something doesn't start up right away concurrently, I just take that as vacation time and I just say it's not a problem. So it takes a lot of flexibility, but the PT Compact makes travel infinitely easier. Because I've had friends who became travel PTs that didn't know where their next contract was, and all of a sudden it was you got 2 weeks to find a place in Michigan and also get your license. And then you have to apply for your license, get your original transcripts, get the college, got to call the original college to get them to send the transcript. It's just a big nightmare. So this improves that a lot. Some of the other benefits to it to the public. So that's really for us as the profession and as the professionals. The public, what do you think some public benefits are? Yeah, and I think attracting workforce to needed areas. So in the Northeast, we have plenty of PT and PTA programs. Actually, when you look at a map of where the PT and PTA programs are concentrated, there's a good amount in the Northeast here. There are some states with very big states and very few PT and PTA programs. So they need to find ways to recruit workforce there. And being able to have this PT compact, it makes it a lot easier. Say, no, you've already got a license. Just come on board. Um, we'll help facilitate that for you. And also, like, there's sometimes in areas of crisis, this doesn't happen quite as much in the physical therapy world, but it definitely can. Um, PT compact that's for obviously for physical therapy profession. Other professions have different compacts as well. There's nursing compact. So this is a growing theme in all of medicine. Yeah, when there's an earthquake in California, they need a bunch of healthcare workers and for a short period of time. So it makes it really easy to say, I'm just going to go zip over to California for 3 months and kind of patch everything together as that influx is needed. Um, so yeah, natural disasters, other incidences might increase that swell a little bit. And um, what are the two things way back in week 1? I think this is the first thing that we learned. What are the two drivers of increased need of physical therapy services? War and disease, right? So is there a pocket of illnesses that exists somewhere? And we can say, wow, there's this pocket of measles outbreak in Texas. Is that going to increase demand for physical therapy in a little while? So that happens here and there. That happens. Another thing we did talk about too is ordering imaging. Physical therapists being able to effectively order imaging safely, not abuse the privilege. Um, the benefits of it contribute toward reduced healthcare costs and utilization. If my patient has an ankle sprain and I think it might be fractured, I don't have to send them back to the primary care. I don't have to call up an orthopedic and say, I need you to look at this ankle for me. I can just order an x-ray, have the radiologist read it, and then they say, yes, it's broken or no, it's not. If it is broken, then we go down that road. Okay, you need an orthopedic. Someone else has to look at this. If the answer is no, it's not broken, we get to say, okay, they're there. I know it hurts, but it's not broken. So it reduces healthcare cost overall. Better rehab outcomes. Another benefit is improved access to care, which really important for the nationwide physician shortage, and especially if you've been paying attention to the news over the last few weeks in Rhode Island. Physician shortage continues to be a problem, especially in Rhode Island, everywhere, but Rhode Island is being hit particularly hard. So yeah, with direct access and with the lack of physicians available, we might be the only healthcare worker for that person. They might not have a physician for us to call and say, can you order an x-ray? So all of medicine has to grow our practice act, and whether it's growing the practice act or just practicing at the top of your licensure status, that can help all of healthcare quite a bit. Telehealth, we've talked about. I think we talked about only briefly. So that is something that has exploded in the last 4 years since the pandemic. It's really exploded quite a bit. And the physical therapy world is no different from it, although there's some limitations and some hesitation with it. Um, you know, I think we can do a really good job in a telehealth setting. I think it requires a different framework in our brains. Like it's really hard when we're used to saying, well, if your knee hurts, I want to touch the knee to see what hurts. Because I know the anatomy and I know how to touch the anatomy and I know how to do these tests and I can say, okay, it's exactly this tissue. It's a lot harder when it's over a video conference or even phone call. But I think we can do a really good job with a lot of patients. Um, Especially in those areas where I could have a patient that lives in Block Island over the winter. They might not be able to come and physically see me. Maybe telehealth is a great option. Um, so some of the trouble with it is, well, anytime something changes, it's tough to adapt to. So that's one thing that we have to understand. Um, how do we make sure we're still treating high quality services? Um, And there is some risk that if I'm showing a patient an exercise or if I'm prescribing exercise through a video, here's the video of the exercise, you go do it. If nobody's there to do it with direct supervision, and if they then get hurt, is that on me? Is that on me is that potential negligence on my end? I gave them this exercise, but I wasn't able to monitor them. So that is a strong question. I my personal that's a definite question and it's definitely something we have to really work. My counter to that, my personal counter is if Peloton can do it, why can't we? Peloton's not a small company. And where are a lot of people getting their health advice from? Are those people on that Peloton trainers, do they have I'm not speaking ill of any of them. I don't know any of them. So, you know, if they're watching my YouTube videos, I'm not dogging on you, right? That would be really funny if I got a message someday. I was perusing your YouTube channel and watching your lectures. Anyway, but what's the training of a Peloton instructor? Is there a bar? Do they have a license? Do they have like but that's where a lot of people are getting their health advice from. So if Peloton can do it and make a lot of money doing it, again, it's not a small company. I think we can do a pretty good job. And yeah, we have to wrestle with some of the risk there and we have to find ways to minimize it. But I think we can do a really good job. I think we have to be a little creative and I actually think it's probably your generation that'll drive a lot of those changes rather than mine. Um, but anyway, some of the benefits of telehealth potentially decreasing our cancellation no-show rates. I tell you, a day like today, your afternoon schedule in an outpatient place, you got a lot of people blowing you off. It's a nice day. It's finally nice. Coming out of hibernation. I'm going for a walk and not going to PT. Right? Um, but If some of those patients were to call us and say, it's too nice out, I can't go, can I video chat you while you're on your hike by the water, while you go down in Narragansett Beach for clams or whatever you're doing? Like, can we do something? Can we touch base a little bit? Will that be good enough for today? So that's a potential that we have there. One of the other, I think, exciting things is improved scheduling, but work from home options. So maybe one day a week you have a virtual day, and you're working 4 days a week in the clinic, and one day a week you have virtual. That's exciting, I think, for our profession. I know some individuals. I think in general, our profession doesn't have a lot of work options. We need people, and while this is being really well adapted in other sectors of healthcare, especially the mental health therapy type space, this is not growing as quickly in the physical therapy side. But I think work from home, like sometimes that's nice. I think sometimes our profession will resist that because we got into this profession to not sit behind a computer. Like that's exactly what I didn't want to do. So I think we might just internally fight that just because we don't want to just do that. But also potentially treating patients across state lines. Man, I gotta tell you, how many physical therapists and physical therapist assistants with circus training do you think exist out there? Probably not a lot, right? How many middle-aged physical therapists also do jujitsu? Some more than circus, but not a ton, right? So when there's some guy in Iowa that's a middle-aged guy that likes doing jujitsu, I'm a damn good option for them because I know exactly what they're talking about when they say, when I do this, it hurts. I need to do that. How can I modify? I'm the best person for that. When there's that circus performer that gets hurt, Cam is going to be the best person for them. Right. So when we eliminate state lines and geography as part of the equation, it gives us access to patients that might fit us better. Now, I can do wonders for a lot of different people. And especially when I say, do you have a video of what you do? I'm a big sports fan. There's probably not a sport I'm not somewhat familiar with. But there's a lot different between me watching rock climbing, elite rock climbing, and being an elite rock climber. So like I know how to run, I hate running. So if I have I've had elite marathon runners as patients, like barely missed out on the Olympics, high level, like some of the best in the world. I worked my tail off and I think I did a pretty good job. But maybe there's other elite runners that just can understand it a little bit better than me. So I think that is a potential huge benefit of ours that we can really allow our patients better access to the right person for them. Yeah, perfect question that we have to wrestle with, right? So if my patient lives in Iowa, can they access care from me even though I'm only licensed in Rhode Island, or do I have to become licensed even through the PT compact or something? Because if we add up all of the fees for every single state, because there's still fees from every single state, yeah, that's a lot. So it is right now, no, we cannot. We cannot treat across state lines if you don't have a license in that state. So I wonder, well, my prediction is that will be changing in the future across all of medicine, especially with the physician shortage. And in Rhode Island, because we have such a physician shortage, I think Rhode Island might be has an opportunity to be one of those leading innovators to say we will allow our patients to seek outside treatments from practitioners across the country. That is something that we have to wrestle with. And I think an area that really needs to be addressed, and it would be addressed legally. And if we go back to some of the material starts in the grassroots efforts, and then we have those committee meetings and all that kind of stuff. But right now, that is something I can't do. But I think in the future, that's why I said potentially treating. I think in the future that is going to be something that can really improve access to healthcare. So, if we your think of your annual physical, could that be done virtually? If you had a smartwatch that could have some sort of blood pressure reading, I have one patient with a smartwatch that also takes pressure. It's fine. It's not perfect, but it's fine. Man, we've got general vitals taken by our wearable technology. Through a video, I can show my practitioner, I can walk and squat and reach, and I can say it hurts right here. I think that there's a lot that we can do across state lines. Yeah, nothing is perfect, but I think there's a big avenue there that I think in the next decade or two it will change. So, great question. Another problem with our current in the physical therapy world is the rising cost of education. Increasing tuition, also continuing education requirements, poses an obstacle for physical therapists who often struggle with keeping up student loan payments once they start working. On average, physical therapy graduates carry around $116,000 in education-related debt alone. But there's a growing demand for physical therapists. Every single place I talk to says, "Do you know someone? Hey, Josh, do you know someone?" Or they tell me, "Oh God, we're so excited, we just hired somebody." Like it is really hard. The demand for physical therapy is sky high right now. I was just looking at one job posting. There was a $5,000 sign-on bonus for physical therapist assistants. Here's your, the salary it was somewhere in the new grads. It was somewhere in the low 60s, 61, 62, I forget exactly. But if you sign up to work with us, you're also getting that first year, you get a $5,000 bonus for joining. So usually sign-on bonuses only happen in times of demand. And I haven't seen physical therapist assistants have those kind of sign-on bonuses in a long, long time. So the industry is red hot right now. And there's just not enough PTs. And I'll tell you what, when you talk about the student loan debt and when someone smart says, "Do I really want to take on this debt?" I think that demand is going to be growing and be tougher to fill because there's plenty of people that are pausing and saying, "I don't know if I want to go to PT school." So, yes, short answer, yes. Yes, more places will actually. I was just talking with a place, and they're working out now. How are they going to incentivize their PTAs to become DPTs? And what is their contribution for that? They're wrestling with now. Yes, 100%. The bigger companies will 100%. Yeah.
Say for a fact that we just have like a thing on we should go out or like yeah, so like it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's one of the main reasons that
Yeah.
pretty programs that like that the amount that it costs to actually do it. It's like so hopefully if you get in somewhere I think you can be able to.
So average cost, I think we glanced at this before, DPT from URI, grad school only, between $70,000 and $115,000, depending on housing and traveling. So average salary, this is not starting salary. Average salary is $89,000 a year for PTs. Starting salary is less. PTA from CCRI, all costs starting at this class, ending at the last class. I think it was 17,500 for Rhode Island. Yeah, I don't know what out of state is. I know it's a little bit more expensive, but still reasonable. Average salary for PTs that says 59,000. That is spiked recently. I think when I look at and I don't know every single grad doesn't share me. They'll all call me and say, Josh, I just got a job and here's how much they're paying me. But I do get those phone calls. And my suggestion for all of our graduates is if they're not paying you over $50,000 for your first job, then you should be negotiating hard on that. I had one student making close to 70 on their first job. Holy cow, right? So when you look at and you know, if you want to pull out your calculators and find a student loan payment program, um, the PTAs who make $60,000 a year and carry 17 grand of debt, education debt, have more money to buy nicer cars, put towards a house down payment earlier in life than the DPTs because there's a large chunk of their income that's being paid to that debt. Um, the break even point, and everybody's different, but when you look at big data, the break even point is 10 years. In 10 years, that DPT starts to you start to come out ahead. Um, so it takes a long time for that to start paying off. I am a DPT. I love it. I have a lot of PTAs that sometimes, I mean, some of the downside of PTA is you can get frustrated, especially if you don't work with good people that only give you the patients that they don't want to work with. Like you have to work with a good place. There are some limitations, obviously, to being a PTA versus a DPT. But my PTAs don't take work home with them. Rook, do you have a PTA at there? Who stays late to do paperwork? PTAs or PTs? How often do the PTAs have to like finish up notes on their own? Yeah, if it's a nuts day, yeah. All right, how about PTs? How often are they sticking around? So I get like, so you're gonna make 20 to $30,000 a year more, but you're taking work home with you every single day. For like, is that really worth it? So you're paying the education debt off. You can't buy the nicer car, and you're taking work home with you. Jeez, I think this is a huge problem um, with our profession, and I think this is going to rear its head. I think we're going to be paying for this in a few years. I think we're going to have a big problem. I don't know how it's going to shape, but this is not as sustainable. Now, if we could increase that PT salary to 110, now all of a sudden the math starts to make sense. But it's going to take a lot to get there. But anyway, adapting to new technologies is a big thing. So virtual visits like telehealth we just talked about. Virtual reality for treatment is growing more and more. With technology, it definitely can change our treatment status or treatment style. Although I am going to date myself. When did the Nintendo Wii come out? Early 2000s, somewhere around there, right? So I did a rotation at Newport Hospital, and I'll tell you, Newport Hospital is great because there's some people there. They have some donors with big pockets, and one day I showed up at where I was a student, so we showed up to work, and there was a Wii, a big TV, and a stand, like a whole set that was just donated by somebody. And I being the God, how old was I? Was I 23, 20, something like that? Uh, and they looked at me and I said, "Oh, don't worry, I'll take care of that." I got to play Wii, bowling, Wii tennis with all of my patients, and man, we had so much fun. The patients that like playing tennis, haven't played for a year, man, I can hold on to them as they're whacking this little video game tennis ball around. So much fun. And tell me a better balance exercise than doing this. Like it was so great. So virtual reality for treatment is really growing big right now. I saw it last PT conference I went to, it was everywhere. What are the Oculus? Are those the major brand of that? Some really cool stuff. But I kind of said, well, when I, in mid 2000s, early 2006-ish timeframe, I was using Nintendo Wii, and that was the biggest thing in rehab for a long time. So it's the same, just a little different. But the cool things about virtual reality for treatment, in home care, if my patient used to drive, and reasonably so, not 10 years ago, like I was driving, then I fell, and now I'm looking forward to getting back to that kind of feeling. Some of my patients, I say, you're ready to go, let's give it a ring. And I sit in the passenger seat and we take a cruise around the neighborhood. Only once was I scared out of my mind and did that. But man, with virtual reality, we can put virtual reality and have them sit on their couch and run through a driving test with pedestrians, stoplights, intersections, roundabouts, and then we can collect data to say how efficient were they. So instead of me getting into the passenger seat and saying, I think you did pretty good, we didn't hit that one kid. Now I can have virtual reality do that for me, and then potentially they could give us data, average speed, how many driving corrections do they need, like all of that stuff. That's pretty cool. So there's a lot of things that I think we can grow with that. Here's the other thing. I also think some of this technology, whether it's virtual reality or a different form, when we talk about telehealth, now this is something we can really start seeing a little bit better. AI for documentation. I know of one company, yours, Brooke, that they're starting it soon. Do you know anything? Have you heard anything?
Not much.
Yeah, I heard strong whispers from a few people in that company. Soon, like upcoming, like in the next few months. Yeah, no, that wasn't a physical therapy. Yeah, no, you're right. But when we just talked about the problems with PT, is you would take work home from us, and it really, really impacts the work-life balance. And I'll also say, there's a lot of physical therapists that get burned out and quit either that job or the profession entirely because of that lack of work-life balance. AI might help us with that. AI might save our profession with the documentation. As a PTA, I think your documentation burdens are pretty minimal, and I would expect it. And you shouldn't have a problem now. If all of the PTAs that work with me and all of my students who become grads, like there's a learning curve, but you should not be taking work home as a PTA. So I think that might save our profession, this AI with our documentation. I think wearable technologies you've talked about a handful of times. Smartwatches, either for like health metrics, so heart rate, respiratory rate. You guys ever see? There's a handful of different devices in sports. You guys ever see basketball wears a lot? Soccer, actually, European soccer wears this stuff a ton. They almost look like sports bras. You ever see like a male athlete wearing a sports bra? You ever see that? If you ever do it, you double take and say, "Oh, is that guy wearing that?" There's embedded technology in that, and they can talk about heart rate, respiratory rates, change of speed, how much time is it taking for this person to get from A to B. Some of these, anyway, a lot of ways that we can examine a patient either from a distance or monitor how they're doing with exercise from a distance. There's also different technology that I can do a gait value. So here's one way to do a gait analysis. I can put my feet into water and then I walk across the floor and then I leave little wet spots anywhere my foot touches. After that, I can take my tape measure out and say your average step length is, 36 inches on the left, but only 22 on the right. Why is your step length so much shorter on the right versus left? So I can do all that data. There is technology, video caption technology that can do all of that for me. I know of one place that I used to work. We used to roll out a big mat. It was a digital mat that would map all of that stuff. But we can do that without a mat now, with different with different technologies. So some of the technology that's not necessarily wearable, but video capture technology can really, really change how we practice and coincides with our virtual visits potentially as well. But so everything we're trying to do, we've talked, the theme that we're always trying to do, improve access of care. That's always a topic. Whatever the topic was, we want to improve access of care. Decreasing documentation burden is something that we have to address, and I think AI could really help us with that. But performing treatments and evaluations in dynamic ways. Why does some fitness TikToker, why can they do virtual coaching and fitness when we can't? I think we can if we step outside of our rigid thinking a little bit better. Yeah. So that's in 2009. So how many years is that? 16? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, but I did quit my outpatient job and I was burnt out from that. Average outpatient burnout was within 7 years. And some of those people changed to different sectors. So I'm going to go try hospital, I'm going to try home care like me. And some just leave the whole profession. So I don't have data on PTA burnout, although part of the burnout is that work-life balance, and my PTAs have better work-life balance. Period. End of story. It just that is the fact, and there's no way to convince me that that's not true. I was just interviewing a PT that's looking to do something in home care. And I asked him like, all right, well, what we could start is some per diem and we could give you just a couple pay. And he said, I just can't pull that off because I do paperwork until 7 o'clock at night. So the PTAs that walk out the door without worrying about paperwork can scoop up an extra visit or two in home care. I'll do 6 visits a week in home care. Sure, I'll work until 6 instead of 5 and no problem. The PT can't. So there's another burnout problem where this guy wanted to make more money but he can't get a per diem job. He can't get a 1 or 2 hour a day job because my paperwork demands. Yeah.
How long have you been to dance without patient?
8 years.
Yeah, no, I think it's home.
Why did I choose home care? I was always interested in home care. Even when I was in grad school, I observed in home care for a day. And I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah, I was always interested in it. And then actually, so I got into home care. I made this wonderful decision, since I'm being recorded right now, to propose to my now wife. And then after I did that, after I stood up, on the one knee, I immediately felt, oh shit, how am I going to pay for this wedding? So I started doing per diem, which is just as needed, home care, um, just to make extra money to pay for that. And I really loved it. Um, and that I think accelerated my burnout in home and the outpatient because I really enjoyed it and it was less strenuous than I think that actually accelerated my burnout. I wonder if I didn't get married, like butterfly effect, right? If I didn't propose to her, would I still be an outpatient or not? I don't know, but yeah, it was a good move for me. Yeah. Um, so any other questions? I did love my time in outpatient. I don't want to make it seem like I'm bashing on outpatient, but outpatient, it is a grind and there is a big burnout with it. So I love my time on it. Yeah. I guess you could. If you were a PTA, then you became a PT, decided you didn't like it, could you go back to being a PTA? I think you could. You would just have to let your PT license expire and then renew your PTA. And then you'd say, I don't have a license. You can't hire me. Like, yeah, I think I don't believe I don't believe you can. I don't see a reason why you would.
Yeah.
I bet you there's not a direct rule saying you can't hold them at the same time. Why would you? No, yeah, 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 yep, yeah. And in Rhode Island, every state does a little different, but in Rhode Island, all of physical therapy licenses, PT and PTA, expire on the same day every 2 years. So you would graduate, you have your PTA license and it's good for 2 years. And if you get your PT license at the same time, that license is only good until the expiration date. So if you get it in that mid-cycle, you got a license for a year, then you got to renew. So yeah, I don't see a way that you would be prevented from doing it. I would, if we were to get together in half a decade and have that conversation, I would just advise you to find a place that you do like. And it's probably more of the place that you're working and not the role of a PT versus a PTA. In the home care world, it's a little crazy. I think talk about burnout. The way to burn out PTs is to have them do only evals. Your job is to only evaluate and reevaluate and discharge evaluate, and all of the care is given to PTAs. There are some places that do that because we get paid pretty good on evals and we don't get paid all that great on revisits. So that if that's the job, that's one way to burn out your clientele. I mean your staff. I would tell you, you can go be a happy PT somewhere else without that burden. Um, improving access to care is something we've always talked about with direct access, right? Direct access is accessing physical therapy without physician referral first. Improving the legality and also insurance reimbursement. So just because it's legal for somebody to come and see me without a referral doesn't mean their insurance will pay me. And that is a huge problem. Prior authorization is the way that the insurances are throwing a monkey wrench in that. So that's a huge problem that the APTA is in Rhode Island is addressing right now, nationwide too, but I'm part of the Rhode Island chapter. Improving insurance coverages, looking at prior authorization, like I talked about, capitation, right? Capitation is limiting number of visits or dollars spent. Improving reimbursement. Man, if we're going to pay our PTs 110 grand a year, like we should be, that money's got to come from somewhere. And the insurances got to fight for them for improved reimbursement. So improved access to care definitely means more work, but does it mean higher pay? That's one thing that we hasn't necessarily happened quite a bit in my time as a physical therapist. It means more work. It means I'm going to see 65 patients a week instead of 60 or 75 instead of 70. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to get paid more to do so, which increases our burnout risk. So some other thing, improving public trust. We talked about why it's important for the public to trust physical therapy, like as a profession. So one of the ways we do it is we make sure we know what to do and we report in serious times. So for patient abuse, geriatrics and pediatrics, all healthcare workers are considered mandated reporters. So there is not a question of should you, if you have any level of suspicion, the answer is yes, you report to the authorities. Now, I have only had to do it once for an elderly person, and they were being neglected, and that is a form of abuse. And my wife had to do it once with pediatrics. And yeah, it always it sucked for me to have to make that call. I'm really fortunate, but I've only had to do it once. Um, and same thing for my wife. But we are required mandated reporters. And man, if we didn't report and something negative happened, it will come back and really, you should rightfully lose your license to practice. You can no longer be trusted. Now, domestic abuse is different. Domestic abuse, and there's a lot of different forms of domestic abuse, but it is recommended that we do not. We empower the patient as much as we can. The reason is because there is potential for greater harm to that patient. So, I've been through a lot of trainings, and especially in grad school, we had a whole day of a domestic violence resource advocate. And it was really enlightening to hear why, really sad to hear why too. So I'm sorry if this is bothering you. But it is important for us because, man, in the physical therapy world, we see more of our patients than any other healthcare provider. We see more of our patients, meaning frequency. So, twice a week for 2 or 3 months. That's a lot. It also, I need you to take off your shirt so I can apply this modality. I need to palpate this part of your body. And so we see more square footage of their bodies than a lot of, how many people in their yearly visits, the physician doesn't even have you take off your shirt. It's happened to me. You're not going to do a screen or something? No, we're good. So we are going to be in the situation where we might catch on these things. So the reason why it's recommended we don't report is because the greater harm to the patient, the risk is if the police show up to the door that day and there's not enough for the police to take action, when the police leave, what's going to happen? That's the big worry. Same thing about pamphlets. Not to having pamphlets. Hey, here's the Domestic Violence Resource Center. Here's the hotline. Here's the thing. Here's the place to go. Giving that as an option for the patient to take, but forcing the patient to take it or slipping it into their purse when they're not looking. Because if that person that's causing the abuse finds that, then it's a source of conflict. So recommend we empower our patient. I care about you. If there's something you want me to help you with, I'm there for you. But that is the limit of our role. If they accept our help, then we can help them take the next steps. But our job is to simply be there, open the door, and be there for the person. So misconduct by workers, we are also mandated reporters if there's patient harm, but also in our part of our professional ethics, if we notice a patient, a coworker doing something wrong, fraudulent billing, showing up to work under the influence, we are required, bound by our professional ethics, to report. If we don't report with our mandated reporters for elderly and pediatrics, we can face criminal charges for that. If we don't report misconduct from our workers, we can face professional misconduct. So that's my license, not necessarily jail time. With pediatrics and geriatrics, both jail time and professional licensure is on the line for discipline. For misconduct by coworkers, just my license. So unless I'm participating in the fraud, then jail time's back on the table. Any suspected abuse of an elderly person or of a child. Yeah, those are our mandated reporters. Yep. All right, let's go back to our. All right, define issues that PTA profession is addressing in the legislature. So that's the kind of stuff that we just talked about. What are the first few things that we talked about? PT compact was one of them. Any others? Imaging is another one. Yep. I think those are the big ones. Telehealth, not necessarily, that can be addressed in the legislature. And especially when we talked about practicing across state lines, that will definitely be handled by legal. Implications of these issues to the profession. How about multi-state licensure, the PT compact? How does that impact the profession? Absolutely. It allows us to work in multiple states at a time. Man, my workers that work in Attleboro, man, if we could work in, I mean, Pawtucket, if we could cross the line into Attleboro, how many pages? Those are two big towns, big state. Like, I could keep a person very busy in just those two towns alone. They're right next to each other, but they're across state lines. So, that is something that yeah, would definitely impact our profession and improve access to different jobs.
Is there a difference in interest for PTAs?
Yeah. Any others? How about imaging? How does imaging impact the profession? Absolutely. So improve quality of care, improve speed of care is what you're talking about for the person. Reduces healthcare costs, and that's another big one. It also helps us and we become I talked about before how chiropractors do a great job marketing themselves. If you have back pain, you come to us. Well, if somebody's got any pain, you come to us because we can even order imaging and just make sure that it's not broken, whatever it is. So it improves our appearance of this profession as being the first choice. When you have pain, you come to us. Any others? So how does that impact potential impact to the profession? Yeah, I think that's the big one. Reach more access to more patients, and whether it's improving our cancel no-show rates or just access to patients that are in difficult geography. Marketing PT professions with healthcare reform. So that was, geez, this objective is a little weird. Where did I think the adapting to new technologies and the telehealth is an access to care. Those are kind of the three things that we talked about as far as healthcare reform goes. So, and then what are the vulnerable populations that we are required to be reporters? Pediatrics and elderly, and there's one other. Yeah, abuse by a coworker, whether it's abuse of finances, fraudulent billing, or incompetent care would be the other one. All right, do we have any questions on these things? All right, stop the sharing, stop the recording. Good luck studying.